peoples. That was a long day, which will be by the time you're listening to this. That was a long day today, but it was actually yesterday by the time you hear me babbling away here. That was a long one. And Sarah's got her surgery tomorrow, so she's a little stressed out. She's doing her hat and t-shirt orders for everybody out here right now. And said, why don't you go in your shop and do a video for tomorrow? Like, okay. I will. You can tell when people get a little stressed out and need their space, you give it to them, right? So here we are, hiding in the man cave. Now, what happened yesterday? Man emailed and said he had a friend who had a clear photograph of a female Sasquatch. It's funny, that got me thinking. Not that I don't need a photo myself, although it would be a crazy thing to see, a legitimate see the whites of their eyes photograph, wouldn't it? But it's funny, you know how many, for all the people that have been here long enough, how many times have we had people email in, they've got a video or a perfect photograph and they're going to get it to us? How many? And how many followed through? None. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird? It's not weird. We had a guy send in a photograph of one of these beings standing on the horizon skyline to some brush over top of a vehicle. California, I believe it was, said his sister or somebody had a high-quality zoom lens photograph of it, going to get it right to us. Never did. You know what I mean? It's endless. I wonder what we would do if somebody finally actually did that. Although I do have quite the video on my phone, but promise secrecy. I know. It's funny, eh? It's funny too, and on a side note, somewhat related to photographs, somewhat not, is I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole a little while ago, and it just irked me in a way. In a way, it kind of irked me. Not irked me, but just made me shake my head. You know, the frustrating examples of mental health issues when it comes to this topic is really unfortunate at times. And I came across, there's more than, I think, 2 or 3 or 4. There's a handful of people out there who actually dedicate their time to proving somebody in the Bigfoot community is a fraud. Hoaxers. And they're serious. Isn't that amazing to you? I mean, I got to vent about this a little bit. I mean, I find that to be absolutely amazing. It's like, oh, really? You expose hoaxers in the Bigfoot world. Gee, that's hard. Right? Oh my God. Wow, that's a real hard one you tackled, did you, in life and spent your time on? Really? Oh my God. Dedicating your life and a YouTube channel to attacking people in the Bigfoot, Sasquatch world and proving them as hoaxers. What are they, a dime a dozen? Right? And then to actually be serious, you're actually serious about it. You're dead serious. You are delivering yourself to the world as an individual who will expose those Bigfoot hoaxers. And you're not even a comedian. You're serious. Holy shit. Oh, man. Yeah, I saw a couple of those a little while ago, and it just made me shake my head. It's like, holy shit, dude. Really? Really? Is that, you're that skill-less in life? Find something hard to do. Good God. All right, anyway. There you go. My delivery may be a little off, but I thought it was kind of funny, and I probably thought about it earlier, and I thought I had a funnier delivery on that topic, but maybe I'm a little too tired. It's been a long day. Long day. I think we should hear some people's voice instead of mine. I am the guy who's going to expose Bigfoot hoaxers. Holy shit. Remember there's another guy, I forget what his name was, Bigfoot Dorky or something. Did the same deal, nonstop. I think he faded away too. I think he attacked this channel too, actually. Faded away. Anyway, let's hear somebody. Alright, there's no title to this. There's no nothing to this. Just starts typing. So I'm going to mark it as red. Hi, Steve. I just want to say I love the channel and keep doing what you're doing. I've shared this story before to some close friends, and some took me seriously and the others just seemed to laugh. The ones who laughed are the ones who spend minimal time outdoors. Not that I have a plan to prove myself, but for the sake of the story, I will let you know that I've spent more time in the woods than most grown men, and I'm only 23, with multiple solo sheep hunts and countless solo elk hunts, with several of them being successful. At 23, that's pretty good. So, long story short, I have good eyes and I know what I see when I see it. To begin the story, I was visiting a friend who was working in the Peace region of Alberta, and I planned on staying with him for a few nights while he was working out hunt elk. We ended up having quite the night at the local bar and didn't end up sleeping till roughly 4 a.m. Ouch. But I was here to hunt elk, so I was up after an hour's sleep and off to my spot. I remember doing that in my 20s. I remember going straight from the party to hunting and then waking up in the forest. Crazy 20s, right? I will admit I was dehydrated and tired, but the elk sign I was seeing was keeping me on full alert. After walking and calling for about 4 kilometers down an old cut line, I came to a slough, and there it was. My first thought was, why the hell is there a guy in a ghillie suit sitting on that hill looking over the pond? The pond was full of ducks, I might add. I could feel the gaze of this thing staring right at me. When I pulled up my binoculars to look at it, it would turn its head. As soon as I put my binoculars down, I could feel its gaze burning through me. At no time did I feel threatened or anything of the sort. I kept checking over and over with my binoculars, but every time I lifted them to my eyes, it would turn its head and look away. This is when I realized there's no way in hell I'm staring at a human being. I did not feel fear, to be honest. I was completely calm. The creature I was looking at never moved a muscle besides turning its head. It was very large, and I had a perfect look at it for minutes. Sitting on a small open hillside no more than 250 yards away. I still can't believe I didn't take a picture. Not that my story would be any more relevant if I had a photo. True enough. After a couple of minutes of watching this thing, I decided that maybe I should just leave. I walked about 100 yards back up the hill towards the truck, where I'd lost sight of the being for maybe a minute. I turned back to look one more time, and it was nowhere to be seen. I should also add that it was very dark in color, nearly black but still brown, similar to our Canadian moose. The hair was long and shaggy, not short fur. Excuse me. I couldn't give you a height because it was sitting down, but it had incredibly wide shoulders, and I would guess it at 400 pounds plus. After I got back to the truck, I went back to the farm and had supper with my friend and his boss, and I never mentioned what I had seen that day. I hunted the next couple of days on some private land and actually had a small 5x5 come to my calls. There was a range road between me and him, and all he had to do was jump the fence and he was mine. Sadly, a white truck full of guys drove by and shot him right on the road. Oh, that sucks. Discouraged, I packed up and headed home, and I've yet to go back and hunt that area, but I would sure like to again someday. I'm still baffled at the calm feelings I had that day, because when I played over my head, I should be freaking the F out. It was almost as if the being knew I meant it no harm, and therefore it meant me no harm. It is something that will stay in my mind forever. It has not impacted my love for the outdoors in the slightest. Before I end this, I want to add there is only one way into that spot. I seen the creature, and I was the only truck parked there. Not a farmer's field for miles, just thick poplar ridges and slough bottoms. Steve, if you want to share my name, that's fine. It's Carter. Thanks for sharing my story. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this experience. Cheers. Okay, man. Well, I'm super stoked you still hunt. I always love hearing that. I really, really, really dislike hearing it when people say they quit. Really dislike that. I'm super glad you keep planning. What are my thoughts on that? I don't know what's going on with these beings and their ability to know we are looking at them. I don't know how many times we've had people that be emailed in, seen this huge, massive brown thing making its way off to the brush or the timber, and they looked at it and it stopped dead. Frozen, dead, still. When they either put their scope or binoculars on it, looked at it, it stopped dead. I think there's binoculars with that one particular one I'm thinking of. Stopped dead in its tracks. With its back to the human being, but knew the human being was looking at it. What's up with that? There's something about our eyes that we don't know, I believe. Or there's something about somebody's eyes that we don't know a thing about, but these beings do. That's what I think. I think that these beings have come across some type of being, whether it be human or not. But the eyes of something has got to them, or has something over them, or does something to them, and is threatening to them. The eyes of something are a known threat to these beings, without a doubt in my mind. Without a doubt. And I guess they just don't take chances with our gaze, just in case we may be one of these beings whose gaze can be maybe possibly be destructive. I don't know. But that's what I think. I wonder how many other people around that area have seen that thing. Here's another one. Thanks for sending that in, man. Email me back again if you're still here with us. Email me back again if you've learned anything else since. All right? Here's another one. Hi, Steve. Thank you for coming forward and admitting that you know about the forest people. 4 years ago, I didn't know. I thought they were a story to scare kids. But I learned one night out camping with my aunt that they are real. I was wearing thick socks and covered with blankets when I heard X1 approach. It first sounded like someone riding a horse up, and then it turned to bipedal and made a scuffing, nor say like someone not picking up their feet. Okay, you got it. There's a bunch of typos in here, you guys. Sorry. And I'm going to sneeze. Got to be kidding me. I hate sneezing. Hold on. I think you meant when I heard it approach, it first sounded like someone riding a horse up, and then it turned to bipedal and made a scuffing like sound, like someone not picking up their feet when wearing slippers. I heard it scuff the bark on the tree, and then it grabbed my foot. Yes, I was curled up, but when it started measuring my foot with its hand, I tried kicking it. It was like pushing with your foot on a brick wall. My legs are not wimpy. I used to ice skate and do a lot of hiking. Since then, I know they are real. I'm not sure why, but it seems they know where I am now, even though I moved from Michigan to Indiana. I still have encounters and have communicated with them. They wanted me to go into the woods with them, but my dad's cousin walked into a cornfield and disappeared. I didn't want to be on a missing flyer, so I told them I couldn't. And this is what they said. Remain humble. If you stay, remain humble. I sent an email to a First Nation elder because I had questions, and they never messaged me back. I can feel when they are near. It's an energy I pick up, and no matter where I am, they can communicate with me. I know this is what they call the woo side, but I swear it's real. When you can't find tracks in the ground, look for a long mark like a stick was dragged, or look for circles. They hide the tracks by walking on fingers and toes. I've heard them laugh, sob, growl, scream, and that growl that they do vibrates through you. It will freeze you where you stand. I'm not sure, but I think the message they want is for humanity to stay humble. Anyhow, thanks for your time. Sincerely, Sherry. All right. I don't have any email here. There's no email attached to this. There's no title. If you're still with us, please email us more of what you know if you would. Okay? Think of some questions that you would ask you if you were curious and realize that you were in communication, and throw some answers our way if you would. Or not. That's fine too. What's this? Follow-up corpse. Let's read this one. All right. Dear Steve, first let me thank you for reading my previous email. I've contacted a lot of different sites and most don't respond or make fun of and disparage me. About the boneless corpse. It was an Iraqi soldier. The area around the 73 Easting. The area was around the 73 Easting on the world map, where the Battle of 73 Eastings happened. A pillow is a very good description of the corpse. It was entirely boneless, with no blood being in evidence. It was lying on a flatbed gooseneck, heavy equipment trailer, maybe 40 feet long, within about 3 feet of the hinge of the gooseneck. Sorry, thought I heard something out there. Sorry, let me read this one more time. It is dead frickin' quiet here. The body was split from about 4 inches below the shoulder down the left side by a razor-like cut, which ended... Can I read that whole thing? Hold on a minute. Got my effing attention. I want to hear about it. I want to know about this. Right? It's so bizarre that that isn't the instant reaction from your average human being with a firing brain. It's amazing to me. It's amazing. People are amazing, right? This lifetime is frickin' amazing. All right, here we go. What's this? Looks like it's fairly long. I'm going to do it. I don't care. I'm going in. Hopefully I don't fall asleep doing this. Kidding. All right, here we go. Excuse me. Titled Retired Military. Hi, Steve. It's been enlightening and a blessing to have had the opportunity to discover your channel. I came across your channel right at the first video of sharing your grandfather's story. When I listened to that, it immediately brought up what I might consider to be repressed memories. I'm a retired U.S. Army now, and it was my childhood that well prepared me for that career path of combat arms. Several deployments overseas and work across the globe. I found myself medically retired decades later and evolving into a truther. I'd say my childhood experiences coupled with my military career assisted with this transition to search for truth. The other was 9/11. The other was 9/11. One thing I feel with my soul is Sasquatch is most certainly real. First experience. I grew up in northern Sierra Nevada mountain range hunting with my dad since I was big enough for a backpack. I was at my first bear tree while hunting with hounds when I was a year old. Hunting with my dad, along with playing lots of sports and even more chores than the average kid, evolved me into someone that was effective navigating the mountains I love so much and later my career. Before liberals ruined California ecosystem, spring bear season was a thing, and hound hunting was still practiced. Bears could be pursued but not taken. It provided a training season for hounds. Night hunting only was allowed during spring bear season, so the days required naps and sometimes camaraderie with other hunters we knew. We roughed it and napped it on the ground until it was too warm or the ants began to bite. I woke up with the sun in my eyes and a stench in the air as my father still napped. I couldn't shake the smell. The dogs were on a stake line behind me near a spring with alders nearby to provide a little cover. This area we'd camp in was a small meadow with one moon dust covered road in and out. In the center was a small cedar grove where we camped. The edge of the meadow was surrounded by thick timber that created good cover to dig a cat hole to do your business. as I shook the cobwebs from my nap. The odor of spoiled salami immediately came to my mind, like a sweet, spoiled meat stench. Salami and summer sausage was always a snack with pepper jack, crackers, and soda during hunting season. I was keen to the smell. This was different, though, because it was so intense. And looking back, it's probably what actually woke me up. I walked over to the tree line to relieve myself. As my eyes adjusted to the dark timber, I noticed cat holes that had been filled in and covered were now uncovered. I thought it was strange, but passed it off as an inquisitive animal. I zipped up, walked quickly back to the cedar grove, and woke my father to explain what was happening. He initially passed it off as child's imagination, but then things changed. My dad sat straight up and began to look around. Simultaneously, every hair on our bodies stood straight up. You mentioned how important it is to have a dog with you as an early warning device. Well, we turned around to see what the hounds were doing, and they were scared shitless. These dogs hunted bear, cougars, bobcats, and hogs. They were well trained, happy to hunt, and nothing intimidated these dogs in the woods. That all changed that afternoon. These dogs were laid out flat at the ends of their string line and looked like they were wishing their way to China. My dad told me to grab my gear and get in the truck while he loaded the dogs. My father never scared. He was a logger, a hunter, and cowboyed a little. He's 80 now and still rides his horse and bucks hay. He's tough as nails. That afternoon, I saw a different man. I couldn't wait in the truck, and I grabbed what we had for protection, which was a Winchester Model 94 behind the seat. I jumped on top of the dog box in the back of the pickup and covered my dad as he loaded the truck. Something came over our senses. Experienced hunters don't have reactions like this in the woods. We assess, evaluate, and strategize a game plan to be successful. At that moment, all we wanted to do was get out fast, as we could hear the occasional large branch snap while whatever it was circled us. Ugh. This was all happening at dusk. Once the old 72 Chev pickup was loaded, we were rolling out, scared out of our wits. We still didn't think we were safe. As we egressed, the headlights were on and winding around the moon dust-covered 2-track trail, we noticed something had stirred up the dust ahead of us. We came around a corner, caught a glimpse of something very large and dark crossed the road just beyond the peripheral of the headlights. As we drove what seemed to be 3 mountain ranges before we stopped the truck, we tried to reason with our minds what animal it could have been. Moose and elk were non-existent, and nothing explained the smell. I researched the school and community libraries. At 10 years old, I never found an answer, but I already knew. Second experience. I'm 12 years old, camping with my family near a local swimming hole outside of Sierra City, California. We brought family that hadn't camped before us, so we tried to make accommodations comfortable for the females in camp. And after a day of swimming, we finished out the evening with the typical hot dogs, burgers, and s'mores. It was an established campground, complete with restroom facilities. Not our style of roughing it, but it worked for the situation. In the eve before dusk, people were out walking or bicycling to access walking or bicycling the access loop road through the campground. As I sat outside the tent with my cousin, we heard the most god-awful scream. It sounded like a woman was being murdered, but she used a loudspeaker to project her voice. The campground stopped. Everything went dead silent. We all heard it. It was impossible to not have heard it. I could hear chatter begin from the other camps, and the men stepping into the road asking one another where it came from. No one heard or saw anything else that night. Other campers went down into town to alert the authorities. That's a significant sound. There was a quiet surrounding the campground that night, and the previous night was louder than we wanted to experience. This night, not a peep from the other camps. I've heard cougars scream, but it was nothing like that. and 100 times louder. The scream shook the soul. Third experience. 3 years later, my father had a mining claim a few short miles from the first encounter. We also used it for a hunt camp during deer and bear seasons. We arrived one day to discover something had been bedding down in the ferns directly behind the camp trailer. We didn't discover any tracks, but we really didn't look very hard either. We considered it was probably a bear who'd already moved on. We had a spring coming out of an old mine tunnel nearby, which provided probably the best drinking water I've ever had. It was a great place for any creature to stop and rest. Later that night, as I lay in the top bunk with my uncle below me, I stared out of my window that viewed the hillside with the moon overhead. It was close to a full moon that night, and it lit up the vegetation, casting shadows. As I gazed outside the window of my bunk, my eyes fixated on a bush 2/3 up the hill. You know how it is. You stare at something long enough, you see what you want to see. As I stared at the bush, it began to get a little smaller, a little larger. Slight movement. Excuse me. I considered it could have been a bear, but we had dogs with us, and they were sleeping in the dog box in the back of the truck. Anything around would have most certainly alerted them. My suspicion grew until I interrupted my dad and my uncle's late-night banter about whose fart stinks more. I asked my uncle to look out his window to the hillside to see if he noticed anything. My dad immediately asked if a bush turned into a bear, and we all chuckled. But shortly thereafter, the giggle stopped as my uncle locked onto the bush. It was a calm, clear night with no breeze, yet this bush has a gentle, subtle, steady sway or rocking motion to it. As I got up and headed outside to check on the dogs and maybe get a better view, I remained fixed on the bush in case it moved when they stepped outside. The swaying bush remained, yet they couldn't see it from outside. My uncle had seen it from his bed, but outside, the bush didn't exist. My father pulled out his 2 best strike dogs, and they wanted back inside as quickly as possible. I could still see it. And as they returned to the warmth of the camper and prepared for bed again, I continued to gaze. None of us could make sense of it as we discussed the oddness of the situation. And at that moment, the bush stood up into a hunched-over, crouched position, but much larger than a bear. Plus, we already ruled a bear out because of the dog's reaction. In a few steps, it disappeared into the shadows of the timber, and it moved on all 4s. But whatever it was, didn't look like it moved. Whatever it was, didn't look like it moved like that usually. Excuse me, like a man trying to make himself smaller as he exits a crowd. It was a moonlit night, but whatever it was, it didn't silhouette itself, and it didn't stand a full upright bipedal posture. In that location, there's enough light to see what I saw and nothing more. Did it cloak itself while my dad and uncle were outside? Who knows? Fourth experience. Holy. 13 years later, I'm on military leave, and I link up with my dad in central Idaho for a public lands elk hunt. After exhausting an area, then expanded area for better than a week, I focused my efforts further to the north. Right before dark on the 12th day of my 14-day hunt, I spot this massive 7x8, and he wasn't going anywhere soon. He wasn't going anywhere, so I made a plan to bust out early a.m. Needless to say, as I went after that bull the next morning, I pulled the trigger on a smaller bull out of angst. Never saw that big bull again. My experience was in that first area I was hunting around day 5. As I began to expand my hunt to the north, I drove out a logging road to a dead end where I'd take off into the woods from there. It was like any mid-October day. It was sunny and brisk. A beautiful day. And I was excited about the hunt. I was feeling positive, to say the least. I stepped off the road and into the tree line after crossing a creek bottom. I skirted up the hill into the timber on the other side, leaving the truck and the road out of sight. As I always do, whether a hunt through the woods or on a or on a patrol through the jungle, etc., I do the same thing. I step off into the wood line away from the noise and pop a squat. This is where I listen. I let my senses adjust. In the military, this also involved water breaks, comms, and map checks. In the woods, my senses tuned into the squirrel chatter, a bird flying by, the water flowing down the hill behind me, just tuning in, getting ready. Once I started off, the game plan changed. In the military, we call this a frago, fragmentary order, where the original plan is deviated by higher. It's almost always the case and expected, but not when I'm on leave, on an elk hunt. But I felt like time stopped. The trees stood still. Squirrels stopped chattering, and I couldn't hear anything other than the heartbeat in my chest. In my experience, this only happens right before I'm about to take a shot. My senses hone in and everything else fades as I take the breath. This time, I felt the breath was taken from me. As my vision closed and my heartbeat pounded in my ears, I flipped my safety off and went to a high ready as I immediately knew I just walked into an ambush. I lost my senses, Steve. My head ached. My vision was blurry. I had difficulty moving as if I was walking through deep, loose sand. I pulled up with my back to a few trees that had stood close together and leaned against them to keep from falling over. My mind said I was in trouble, but I didn't know where it was coming from. I've been around bears, black and grizzlies. I'm as alert and attentive to nature as the next experienced outdoorsman, but at that moment, I felt like a lost child. There was a lapse of time. This occurred. I was less than 10 minutes from the truck, but I was away from for a couple of hours. Once I was able to gather my senses, I quickly hiked out to the truck, and once I arrived, I knew something was watching. For the first time on a hunt, I was scared for my life. I couldn't get turned around and out of there fast enough. I never told my father, even though we had each shared experiences together. I never told anyone that story until now. And as an adult, I remembered how I felt after my first incident when I returned to the school library to have the librarian giggle when I asked her for books on Sasquatch. I held a top-secret clearance with CSI in my military career and entrusted with millions upon millions worth in men and equipment. I didn't want to risk that. I proudly served my country, but I've always known our government, with others, had done dirty shit. Once I was sent home with my desert card punched, I began to seek truth. From the JFK assassination, 9/11, deep state, aliens, Enoch and the Nephilim, ascension, free energy, to my experiences in those mountains as a child, I believe it's all connected, Steve. And as we move forward into 2021 and further, dark will become light. All right, so this is back in 21. You sent this in. You got my attention. Those experiences didn't end my hunting days, and actually, it was my last deployment. Over the years, war changes people. Maybe I did too. I do more fly fishing than anything else these days, and nature is still my go-to. Nothing has permanently chased me out of the woods. I won't allow it. In my opinion, I believe these beings are genetic mutations of the Nephilim, as one viewer of yours described. While overseas, we all knew of the giant of Kabul. Others in specific units of the U.S. military speculate missions took place to eradicate more than one. I also believe they can sense your soul and its intent. If you're someone looking to exploit the situation, you're likely to never see anything. If your heart is pure and you're spiritually strong, they pick up on that and let you be while providing a warning. You're still not. In my opinion, I believe spirituality acts as a shield because they are of the Nephilim. Thank you for this forum. Your effort will be commended for a long time, Steve. You bring people together and help them heal. It's therapy to those who've held onto their encounters. Believe it or not, you're doing God's work, brother. Stay true to yourself, Steve, and watch your six. Shit hits the fan, you have another that's got your back. Peace and love to you, my brother. Cliff, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. It's a good email, isn't it? Well written, straight to the point, as a straight shooting man. I think that's a straight shooting, honest man myself. You could have possibly heard that one. Sounds somewhat familiar, but they should all sound somewhat familiar anyway. You know what I mean? They should. God, I'm starting to melt. But I want to make sure I give her enough time to have her peace and quiet and do what she's got to do. You're still with us, man. You're still following us. Email me back sometime if you feel like it, if you learned anything else, would you? If you've learned anything else on any of those topics you've been looking into, because I look into all of them too. I learned a lot myself. Now, how long have we been sitting here? I'm going to keep going. How long is this? Not too long. I'm going to do it. And a side note, before I forget to mention, I wanted to mention earlier and I forgot, for all the people who joined the membership on the channel, Sarah got all the food delivered today. And the grand total of children fed from all of you on the membership channel, the membership, whatever it's called, membership page of this channel, in 8 days, you have fed 17 hungry children, from babies in diapers to, I don't know what the oldest one is, to be honest. They're all little children. And I think 7 or 8 adults, and 17 children in 8 days. There you go. Good work. Good work. Now, moving along. I forgot to mention that earlier, sorry. Hi there, Steve. I would appreciate it if you would not disclose my first name. Gotcha. I just want to thank you for your website, where we can all share our experiences. You've answered many questions on the Sasquatch beings that I've kept to myself for years. I've been regularly following your YouTube channel posts, as well as Scott Carpenter and Dave Plattis. And I'm from the little town of Arlington in Washington State, just above the Stillaguamish River. The Stillaguamish River Valley. And I'm 65 years old. In my younger days, I did a lot of modern firearm and bow hunting on federal DNR, as well as state wilderness properties for blacktail, mule deer, and elk, with a longtime hunting buddy. I never actually seen a Sasquatch being, but have had several instances where the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, but one really stood out from the rest. This occurrence was located in the Pasayten, P-A-S-A-Y-T-E-N, Pasayten Wilderness in the early 80s, not far from the Washington-Canadian border, at approximately 6,000 foot elevation. My longtime hunting buddy and I generally plan our hunts by separating on our routes and communicating with each other by use of FM radio, VOX operated two-way radio headsets. We were bow hunting and not allowed to carry any firearms for added protection in a Washington State wilderness area at this time. Go figure. It was a little heartening because we knew that trouble or problem grizzly bears were being relocated into Washington State wilderness areas from British Columbia, Canada. I was still hunting a game trail and then smelled the most acrid, disgusting smell, i.e. not a skunk or a dead carrion. I also thought it was strangely silent, dead quiet. No native alpine squirrel, ground squirrel, or alpine bird sounds as previously encountered at the beginning of our planned hunting route. As I slowly scanned the area, I saw an obscured cave opening back in a stand of noble fir trees. Of course. I instantly was thinking grizzly. Then the hairs on the back of my neck went crazy and stood straight up. Carefully and in a low voice on my VOX radio set, I contacted my hunting buddy to get his location, as he was now ahead of me and below on the ridge we were working. I had to bite my lip and proceed past this cave opening. To this day, I've always wondered if my sixth sense had kicked in and allowed me to get by unscathed. Was there a Sasquatch being watching me? I lost my hunting buddy many years ago in an experimental aircraft accident and have contemplated hunting on my own, but that unnerving incident still wells up in my memory. It's a shame. I definitely agree in the buddy system and I would never consider hunting or hiking alone, especially now at 65 years old. I do believe that these Sasquatch beings exist through generations of First Nations people's historical accounts. Your Sasquatch being observations and experiences, as well as others via your website, support their supernatural abilities beyond our perceptions. Thank you again for your time and letting me share my experience with you and others. Best regards and be safe. Okay, man. You know, I've said it before, a lot of people email in about that feeling. Just a feeling. And it's tough, right? It's tough to put us there. But you have to understand, well, I understand the feeling. But the feelings are so intense, right? They've got to be absolutely freaking crazy over the top intense to ruin the outdoors for you. And think about it, to knee-jerk into going and finding a place like this and emailing. Just a feeling, but it's got to be absolutely crazy intense. You know, looking back to it, I forgot to comment on that email a few minutes ago where they emailed in and they said they didn't even break down camp. They threw the whole tent in the box truck. It just reminds me, this one time always stands out in my brain. I was guiding a bear hunter and we were hunting north of Squamish and south of Whistler, British Columbia. Basically where everybody sees these things crossing the highway weekly. And I'm not kidding. I know a lot of people firsthand have seen these beings cross that highway. Oh, and guess where I hunt? Anyway, I took this guy up to, if you're familiar with the Sea to Sky Highway when you leave Squamish, you're going up and you hit the canyon, and then it goes up, winds around, you level out, and you're right beside the river, and you look up. There's a little mini radio tower up there on top of those pines, the smaller pine trees, way up. And I found my way up there on that old road. And sure enough, here is a full camp sitting there that somebody just left. And it was, it wasn't just left like weeks ago. I mean, this sucker had been flattened by snow, pine needles on it and shit, but everything was there. Right? Isn't that weird? And that for me, especially for what I know and where that was, it's like dog hairs everywhere. And being back up in there, like, okay, what made you leave so abruptly and not bring your shit with you, right? And then where else? Just up from there, before there, as you're going up, there's an access road on the right. Oh, I forget the name of that road. It's the long double passing lanes with the sand, the highway sand and salt facility on the right. That access road right there. There's a couple from Squamish parked to hike up that road, and they saw two of these beings right there. Scared the shit out of their infant child they were carrying. Anyway, babbling. I think I'm going to have to cut this short. I'm melting. It's been a long day. But I'm going to read this one. Then I'm going to go in. I hope she's done. I got her stuff done and she's relaxing a bit. Everybody gets anxious before surgery, right? In about 1975, at the beginning of dove season in the northwest corner of Illinois, my older brother and I were standing in a grassy and weedy fence line waiting for the small, feathered rockets to come over. Tasty birds. We had only seen a few come screaming through, and that was at about 100 yards away from where we were standing. I told my brother I was going to walk down there. On one side of the fence line was mowed hayfield, and the other side was standing corn, about 5 to 7 feet tall. Generally, the corn on the edge of a field is shorter than the corn a few rows in. I walked through the cornfield to the spot where I thought I might be able to plink a dove or two. I sat down on some old cut-up chunks of hedge trees among a bunch of tall horseweeds to get ready for some action. My back was to the cornfield. I sat for maybe 15 minutes and saw no doves. As I was thinking about going back to my brother and calling it quits, a feeling of dread came over me. Hair on the back of my neck stood up, like so many folks talk about in your emails. My body was tingling with a huge adrenaline rush. I got up across the fence line into the open hayfield. Whatever was in the cornfield paced me all the way back to my brother. My gaze was constantly on the cornfield all the way back, but I saw nothing. I was probably 20 years old at the time, and I had started hunting at age 14, and I was in the woods or in the bottomland swamps all the time as long as I lived with my mom and dad. I knew the local flora and fauna. Nothing like this ever happened to me before. When I got back to my brother, he looked at me and said, "What's wrong with you?" Evidently, my body language was screaming, "Let's get out of here." To this day, me and my 7-year-old brother have never spoken about it. I'm 66 now, and I remember it clearly still. Sorry I'm so long-winded. Another time, I was with a friend and another guy about 200 miles north of International Falls, Minnesota. My friend's dad had bought a small island on a huge lake there in the late 50s. We slayed the lake trout maybe 3 days straight. When on the island, the mosquitoes, deer flies, and big blue horse flies slayed us too. Yeah, no doubt. The last night there, we took the boat out of the lake and just drifted a while. Took the boat out in the lake and had just drifted a while, consuming adult beverages and taking in the northern lights. The lights were lime green and just tearing it up. We're almost a half a mile from any land. Super quiet. Then, a huge splash just wrecked the silence. It came from the direction of where we were camped on the island. My friend said, "What the F is that?" He had never heard a huge splash like that in all the years he'd been going to the island with his dad. Maybe not a big deal, but it had to be a monstrous boulder to make a splash like that for us to hear it that far away. I've never seen a Sasquatch, but I have no doubt they exist. I have a lot of thoughts as to why they might be, but it's only speculation. Again, Steve, sorry for the long spiel. I really dig the emails. You're doing a needed service for a lot of people. Thanks. Thank you, man. Can't do the service without people like you, so we're all doing it together. We're all one big team. I don't want to be paced. I'm not up for being paced by something unknown and huge in the woods. I'm just not into it. Not into it. But I want to know why we're being lied to, right? I think that question's basically almost answered. I got a funny feeling the reason we are not being honestly informed is because they just can't control these beings. That's the only reason. They can't control them, and what they can't control, what do? They usually kill, right? They can't control us, they'll kill us, right? If you don't do what you're told to do, they're going to come and get you and put the cuffs on you and take you away. All there is to it. Even if you lost your job, you can't pay your taxes, you can't pay your bills, you can't feed your family, well, you're not going to pay your taxes, you're going to go to jail. And we're going to take your house anyway. Even if you got 5 babies in it, they're going to take your house. Right? But if they can't control you, not good. So it's got to be the reason why they're not honestly informing us about these free beings. Free that we know of, anyway. Anyway, there you go. There you go. It's time for me to go. I'm one tired boy. Fought 6 steelhead today. Had 3 other bites. Got my hands on 3 of them. Got a shit pile of videos in. Saw some bull elk. Took the dog. I actually have a dog. Crazy. It's kind of weird all the time when I realize I got a dog. Never actually had my own dog. It's kind of cool. Kind of cool. Excuse me. The man said I think yesterday, offered up to 2 individuals to speak with me live. Not live, but have an actual conversation with me on here. And I hope they reply. And if they think it might be a little too confusing, if you got an iPhone or whatever, you got a phone, you can do it. Laptop, you can do it. Just need somebody to help. Go get one of the kids. Kids can do anything these days with this shit, right? Anyway, share my story at howtohunt.com. That's where you get what you know shared word for word. What else? Sarah's still cleaning out her store. That link's down below. And she says she's going to be well enough to do next week's shop for the kids. We're getting the kid count up. 17 hungry children. She said one of the moms today, she said she just could not believe how much food she received. We're not just giving them a meal or two. Excuse me, we're loading these women and their babies up. I think they got at least a week plus worth of food or more. I don't know. I haven't a clue. That's her department. Excuse me. She goes and gets it. She knows what to divide up. She finds those women. She's got them getting nominated on this Facebook page. It's pretty cool, but it's cool, but it's sad too because there's hundreds of them. But we'll get there. We'll get them all fed. We'll keep doing this. We'll keep the membership thing going. We'll get them all fed. And take note, I said we will get them all fed. Now it's done. Done deal. Talk to you later.